5:19 local time. The sea is glass. The wind is barely moving, holding under 5 knots. Visibility stretches without limit. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, no one says a word. Then the radar tone shifts. It is not a warning, not yet. Just a sharp, unfamiliar spike breaking into the surface picture. New contacts, bearing 210 through 260. The operations center does not repeat the call back. They already see it. 5 returns appear almost at the same moment, spread wide across the screen, moving too fast to be background traffic. No AIS, no commercial pattern, clean hull lines, speed 23 knots, then 25. That is when the carrier seems to feel it. A low vibration moves through the deck plates as internal systems quietly adjust. Not routine, not full response. Something in between. Music on the bridge, the captain does not raise his voice. Log the contacts, maintain course. The officer of the deck answers. Course steady. Speed unchanged. Below deck, sailors stop mid-step. A tractor freezes at the edge of the hangar bay. Yellow shirts pause with their hands still on tie-downs. No one looks around. They know that tone. Not from hearing it often, from hearing it enough. 5 surface contacts, the operations center confirms. Multiple bearings, coordinated movement, unidentified. That last word matters. At this distance, unidentified does not really mean unknown. It means not yet said out loud. Electro-optical cameras turn outward, one after another, locking onto the contacts as they rise through the horizon haze. Long gray hulls, sharp bows, military silhouettes. Still no flags visible. The bridge sends the hails anyway. Standard, professional. English first, then Russian. No answer. The distance keeps shrinking. 20 nautical miles, 18, 16. The closest point of approach updates automatically. The number drops, then drops again. Someone in the operations center says it quietly. They're fanning out. The 5 contacts are no longer holding parallel courses. They are spreading, changing angles, forming a shallow arc across the carrier's projected path. Not a circle, not a chase, a barrier. On the bridge, the captain steps closer to the chart table. He does not touch it. Any emissions? Minimal, comes the reply. Surface search only, no engagement radar. That is deliberate. The carrier's sensors are fully awake now. Radar, infrared, electronic support measures. Everything is being recorded. Every bearing change, every throttle adjustment, every second. At 14 miles, the visual picture sharpens. No merchant wakes, no fishing gear, no room left for doubt. 5 Russian Navy ships. The name is not spoken on the bridge, but everyone knows what they are looking at. The hull shapes are unmistakable. Gray steel, low profiles, purpose-built lines. They hold the formation as if this exact geometry has been practiced before. The carrier does not turn. At this size, turning says something, so does staying steady. On the flight deck, the island rises above rows of parked aircraft. Their canopies catch the sun, motionless. Elevators remain locked. Nothing launches, nothing has to. The message is not in movement. It is in restraint. Closest point of approach now under 6 miles, the operations center reports. Music. That is close enough for excuses to disappear. Close enough for one bad calculation to become international news. One of the Russian ships edges ahead of the others. Its wake thickens as its speed rises slightly. Not enough to cut across the carrier's bow, just enough to test the line. The bridge camera zooms in. Crew members are visible topside. Helmets on, no one rushing. No visible special teams at their stations. Controlled, calm, professional. The carrier answers in the same language. Maintain course, the captain says again. The helmsman does not blink. 6 miles becomes 5. Somewhere deep inside the ship, a status light changes from green to amber. No announcement, no siren, just a silent acknowledgement that the margin for error is gone. The ocean between them suddenly feels very small. 5 ships, tight spacing, deliberate angles. This is not a coincidence, and whatever happens next will happen quickly. 5:24 local time. The geometry changes. On the surface display, the 5 contacts stop looking like separate vessels. Now they move as if they are pieces of one machine. Their spacing tightens. Bearings shift by degrees, not by miles. Small corrections, precise, almost surgical. Contacts adjusting course, the operations center reports. Speed unchanged, movement coordinated. That word returns again. Coordinated. The lead Russian vessel eases 10 degrees to port. Another falls back half a mile, stretching the arc wider. 2 more hold their positions on the flanks. From above, it would not look like a straight line anymore. It would look like a gate slowly closing, not a chase, not a circle, a barrier. The closest point of approach recalculates. The numbers flicker, then settle lower than before. 4.3 nautical miles. The carrier's projected track now runs directly into the center of the arc. If she holds course, she will pass through the space the Russian vessels are shaping around her. If she turns even slightly, the geometry starts working in their favor. On the bridge, no one says that out loud. The officer of the deck watches the digital chart update in real time. Every vector is recorded automatically. Every bearing change is stamped to the second. The captain studies the surface picture without showing anything on his face. Any response to hails? Negative. The operations center replies. Radio silence continues. At this distance, silence is not confusion. It is a message. Electro-optical feeds sharpen. Hull numbers come into focus. Superstructures resolve into clean, familiar lines. These are not patrol vessels drifting too close by accident. These are naval ships operating exactly where they intend to be. On the flight deck, the wind moves lightly through the tie-down chains. Sailors return to work, but their movements are slower now, more deliberate. No one runs, no one has to. The carrier does not speed up. The carrier does not slow down. At sea, speed can show authority, but predictability can show control. Russian vessels are holding a blocking posture, the operations center says, choosing each word carefully. They are not crossing our bow. They are narrowing the corridor. That difference matters. Crossing the bow would demand a response. Narrowing the corridor invites one. At 3.8 miles, one of the Russian vessels moves closer than the others. Its wake thickens as it increases speed by 2 knots. The move is subtle. The sensors catch it instantly. Contact 3 increasing speed, the operations center calls. Now 27 knots. The carrier answers with silence. No alarms, no sharp orders, no sudden movement. Only the steady rhythm of turbines pushing thousands of tons of steel forward on the same heading it held minutes before. Inside the operations center, analysts watch the electronic environment. The Russian vessels are emitting just enough to navigate and coordinate. No high-intensity tracking signal, no hard lock, no clear step over the line. They are staying in the gray zone. At this range, procedure matters more than machinery. One side is testing pressure, the other is testing discipline. 4 miles becomes 3.5. A Russian vessel on the starboard side shifts again. Its bow angles inward just enough to be noticed. Not enough to break the rules of safe passage. Enough to make the point. The bridge team sees it. They do not comment. Closest approach holding, the operations center says. Still decreasing, but slowly. On the chart, the carrier's projected path threads through the narrowing gap. There is room. Barely, but room is enough. The Russian formation tightens once more, then steadies. They have set their line. Now they wait, and waiting is the most delicate phase. From the outside, nothing looks dramatic. No engines surge, no dramatic gestures, no visible escalation. But inside the ship, every sensor is awake. Every camera is recording. Every decision is being written into a log that will not forget. The captain finally speaks. Continue steady. Record everything. It is not a challenge. It is not defiance. It is procedure. 3 nautical miles. At this distance, crew movement is visible without optics. The deep pulse of engines seems to travel through the water itself. And every person on watch understands how little space now separates discipline from a costly mistake. 5 Russian naval ships hold their line. 1 American aircraft carrier continues forward. Nothing has crossed the final line, but the pressure is no longer theoretical. 0529 local time. The distance stops closing. Not because the Russian ships pull away, but because the carrier's steady movement forces the formation to make a choice. The arc they created must either close completely or open just enough to avoid contact. Inside the Combat Information Center, no one treats the pause as a victory. At sea, pauses are delicate. Closest point of approach holding at 3.1 nautical miles, the watch officer reports. Relative motion stable. Stable is good, predictable is better. The Russian ships keep their formation, but the precision begins to loosen at the edges. One vessel falls behind by seconds. Another adjusts too far, then gently corrects back. Small imperfections, invisible to the naked eye, but not to systems built to notice everything. On the bridge, the captain watches the surface picture without blinking. Any changes in emissions? Minimal, the operations center replies. Same profiles, no high-intensity tracking, no lock. They are still staying on the margins. Below decks, the carrier continues with its familiar rhythm. Thousands of systems run exactly as designed. This ship does not tense, it does not flinch. It was built to absorb pressure. On the flight deck, aircraft remain parked. No catapult cycle, no deck crew rushes. From above, the carrier almost looks indifferent. That is intentional. A sudden launch would change the tone. Restraint keeps it controlled. At 2.9 miles, a helicopter rises from the carrier's deck. Not sharply, not aggressively, it lifts the way it always does, settling into a steady hover before moving ahead. Its presence is exact, not a warning, not a provocation, an observer. The helicopter holds altitude and remains well clear of the Russian ship's operating space. Its sensors face outward. Cameras record. Infrared traces the wakes, the exhaust, and the heat signatures of engines driving steel through open water. Everything is documented. One of the Russian ships adjusts again. Its bow turns outward by a few degrees. Subtle, but enough to widen the gap. Another follows moments later. The line is beginning to loosen. Inside the operations center, the watch team marks every change. Time, bearing, speed. The data trail grows longer and more complete. This is the response. No warnings, no raised voices, no dramatic gestures, just documentation and the refusal to be moved. At this distance, professionalism is the strongest language in the room. Music. The Russian ships continue to shadow, but their blocking posture softens. The arc becomes a curve. The curve becomes a loose screen. They are still close enough to be seen clearly, but they are no longer positioned to force a turn. The carrier moves through the space they tried to deny, slowly, deliberately. At 2.5 miles, the wake patterns change again. One Russian ship reduces speed by a knot. Another holds course but widens separation. The formation breathes out. No one announces it. Everyone sees it. Pressure works both ways. On the bridge, the captain speaks once more. Maintain course. The helmsman's hands remain steady. The helicopter completes a wide orbit, never crossing lines, never posturing. Its sensors collect what the eye cannot fully read. Engine vibration, crew movement. Small throttle changes that will tell the story later, far from this water. The Russian ships do not challenge the aircraft, they do not illuminate it. They allow it to remain. That choice matters. At 2 miles, the risk of contact drops sharply. The most dangerous moment is already passing. Not because anyone stepped back loudly, but because no one pushed too far. The carrier continues on her track, massive and unhurried. Behind her, the Russian ships remain present, still watching, still close. But they are no longer shaping the geometry. Inside the carrier, the atmosphere does not change. No cheers, no visible release of tension, only a quiet understanding that restraint held. This was never just about firepower. It was not about who carried more weapons. It was about control. And this time, control never left the bridge. 0536 local time. This is where mistakes often happen. Not at first contact, not during the approach, but in the quiet seconds after pressure reaches its peak, when crews begin to believe the hardest part is over and discipline loosens by inches. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team stays locked in. Eyes move from radar to optics to electronic readouts in a practiced rhythm. No one relaxes. Not yet. Closest point of approach increasing, the officer reports. Now 2.2 nautical miles. The number should bring relief. It does not. On the surface display, the Russian formation is no longer perfectly symmetrical. One ship drifts slightly ahead of the others, its wake mixing with the turbulence from a nearby hull. Another holds position a little too long before correcting. The spacing remains professional, but the perfection is gone. Then it happens. A Russian ship on the port side makes a sharper adjustment than before. Not hostile, not careless, but sudden enough for every system to notice. Contact 2 altered course, the operations center calls. Port 5 degrees, speed unchanged. 5 degrees is not much, but at this distance, 5 degrees is a decision. On the bridge, the captain watches the maneuver unfold on the repeater display. He does not speak right away. He waits for the motion to finish, waits for the system to confirm whether this is a probe or a correction. The ship steadies again. No collision risk, no bow crossing. Just one brief moment where steel and intent moved closer than planned. The carrier does not react, and that, more than anything, shifts the balance. The Russian ship holds its new heading for several seconds, then eases back. Its wake thins as speed drops by a fraction. The formation behind it adjusts, slower now, less tightly connected. The blocking posture is over. It does not end with a dramatic move. It simply dissolves. At 1.9 nautical miles, the Russian ships begin to open their spacing. The arc breaks into segments. The segments become individual tracks again. Formation loosening, the operations center reports. Shadowing posture only. Shadowing is observation. Blocking is influence. The difference is everything. Overhead, the helicopter remains steady. Its sensors continue collecting. Its orbit stays wide and non-provocative. Its presence has not changed, and that consistency sends a quiet message of its own. We are still here. We are still watching. On the flight deck, crews move more freely now, but the pace remains controlled. No one celebrates. No one assumes the encounter is finished. The carrier continues on the same heading she held before the Russian ships ever appeared. That continuity matters. At 1.5 nautical miles, the closest Russian ship slides astern. Its bow is no longer aligned with the carrier's projected path. Another mirrors the move on the opposite side. The corridor widens without anyone saying it out loud. On the bridge, the captain finally speaks. Log the maneuver changes. No commentary, no interpretation, just facts. In the operations center, the log fills with timestamps and bearings, a complete record of how pressure was applied and how it failed to force a turn. The Russian ships remain nearby, but the energy has changed. Their wakes no longer cut across the carrier's path. Their movements are no longer shaping the situation. They are responding to it. The moment has passed. At 1 nautical mile, the risk of further escalation drops sharply. Tension is still there, but it is no longer active. It is the kind of tension that remains after restraint holds. The carrier continues forward, massive and unchanged. Behind her, 5 Russian naval ships fall into a loose trailing pattern, keeping their presence visible without controlling the path. They have made their point. So has the carrier. No one fired, no one shouted, no one blinked on the bridge. But the outcome is clear. The attempt to block is over. What remains is observation, documentation, and distance slowly growing between hulls that were never meant to touch. This is how pressure breaks at sea, not with noise, with refusal. 0544 local time. The surface picture settles. 5 Russian naval ships remain on radar, but their vectors no longer intersect the carrier's track. They trail at distance now, spread wider, holding parallel courses that signal presence without interference. Shadowing, not blocking. Inside the Combat Information Center, the watch team confirms what the displays already show. Contact steady, closest point of approach increasing, no further maneuvering. The words are neutral, professional, final. On the bridge of the USS George Washington, nothing visibly changes. The captain does not address the crew. He does not need to. The ship continues exactly as it did before the encounter began. Same course, same speed, same quiet authority. That continuity is the conclusion. Below decks, systems shift back one step at a time. Status lights return from amber to green, not announced, just acknowledged. The carrier's internal rhythm never broke. It only tightened, then released. On the flight deck, the helicopter completes its final orbit and turns back toward the ship. It lands smoothly. The rotors wind down without ceremony. Its mission is finished, not because something happened, because nothing escalated. The sensors stop recording only once the distance is safe. Every bearing change, every throttle adjustment, every second of silence, all of it is logged. The Russian ships hold their parallel tracks for several minutes longer, then begin widening separation again. One turns slightly outward, another reduces speed. The formation dissolves into individual movements, no longer acting as one shape. The moment has passed. No statement is broadcast. No signal flags rise. No victory is claimed. At sea, outcomes are rarely announced. They are understood. The carrier did not turn. The carrier did not accelerate. The carrier did not escalate. And still, the attempted block failed. From the outside, it may look uneventful. 5 ships approached. 5 ships fell back. Steel passed steel without contact. But inside the logs, inside the recordings, the story is complete. This was not a test of weapons. It was a test of resolve. In naval operations, restraint is not passivity. It is discipline. A discipline learned through repetition and carried by crews who know that the most dangerous moments are often the ones where nothing visible happens. Because that is where judgment decides everything. The USS George Washington continues on her transit. The ocean ahead remains open and unchanged. Behind her, the Russian ships stay visible for a while, then fade into the horizon haze one by one. Presence acknowledged, pressure absorbed, course maintained. By the time the final contact drops below the radar threshold, the carrier has already moved on. There will be no headlines written on board, no speeches made, no celebration over the speakers, just a completed log entry and another reminder carved into memory. At sea, power is not always measured by how loudly you act. Sometimes it is measured by whether you move at all. And today, only one ship decided the direction of travel. Music.